So you want to move to Canada? Well friends, you're in the right place because that's exactly what I'm going to be talking about today. If you are new to this channel, my name is Emily. I currently live in Canada. I've lived in Canada for 5.5 years, originally from England. So this channel talks about expat things, living in Canada, moving abroad, traveling around Canada and beyond and things like that. If you're into that, make sure to check out the rest of my channel and subscribe if you want to. Also, I think I'm going to be doing this video in a part 1 and a part 2 because I've made a lot of notes, and knowing me, I will probably spend a lot of time talking. So if you want to see part 2 of this video, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. I post videos every single week, so it will probably be this weekend, and then the next one will come out next weekend. So into the video. Today's video is about how easy is it to move to Canada. This is a question I get all the time, especially asking about my personal experiences and what I think and if I had any advice. I'm going to start by saying I am not an immigration professional. I'm not an immigration lawyer, so anything that I say is not advice. It's just based purely on my own experiences and opinions. I would highly recommend you look at getting an immigration lawyer or professional if you are thinking about moving to another country, especially if you're trying to move there permanently, because their knowledge is invaluable and it is so much better than anything that I can tell you. This is purely for entertainment purposes, so yeah, let's just get that out of the way now. That being said, I am going to talk about my own experiences and how easy I think it is to move to Canada, or how easy it was for me personally to move to Canada. Obviously, if you're moving to a new country or even sometimes visiting a new country, you will almost definitely need a visa. So there are different visas that you can get for different countries. I'm going to talk about Canada specifically, obviously, because that's what this video is about. And specifically the type of visa that I came on, which I think is probably the most common, especially for people in my age group, which would be under 30s. So there is a visa called the IEC Working Holiday Visa. The IEC Working Holiday Visa gives you an open work permit. IEC stands for International Experience Canada, and it is really just a program to get you an open work permit. So it is just a route to get you there. You don't have a special visa that says IEC Working Holiday Visa when you come. It is just an open work permit. Or again, at least it was when I first came. So the IEC has some really great pros, but also quite a few cons as well. And I'm gonna walk you through some of the things that I thought were really great and other things that were not so great. The best thing about the IEC visa is that it gives you an open work permit, which gives you the ability to work in a job, and it could be the same job for at least 2 years. This job can be pretty much anything. There are a couple of jobs that you can't do without jumping through some hoops, and that includes things like working in schools and working in medical professions. I think you have to get like additional medical tests done for those, among other things. But you can get the visa without those, so you don't have to do the extra things. But if you are working in education or medical, it's definitely worth bearing that in mind. Again, these things might have changed, so make sure to check out the Canadian government website, because that really is where you're going to get the best info. But for me, I wasn't going to work in those professions, so I just applied for the working holiday visa. And applying for the working holiday visa isn't like applying for a visa in, say, Australia. And I think this is where a lot of people get confused, because there are a certain number of visas that are available to each country every year. Basically, that means that even if you apply for it, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to apply for it. That doesn't sound very straightforward, so let me explain. When I applied for the IEC Working Holiday Visa, I got put into a pool of applicants. Basically, you're asked a few questions to see if you're eligible for the visa, and then you're put into a pool if you are, and that pool is basically full of all of these different people that are deemed eligible to apply. Then it becomes a lottery, and this is where it gets really annoying. So for me, being a Brit, there was 5,000 visas available to UK citizens for the year that I wanted to apply. And when you're applying, it really is based on when you apply, and really it's just down to luck and good timing. For me, I applied in December of 2015, and that was just as the New Year visas were opening, which was really beneficial for me because it meant that I was first in line for the new set of visas. Obviously, applying when the visas just start opening up is going to be your best bet to getting one, because it gives you the most amount of chances. And they don't just pull 5,000 people there and then. They do the draws sporadically through the year, and it does change every year. They don't release all of the visas in December, for example. Sometimes it can be earlier, sometimes it can be later. For me, it was just in December, and then they pulled them every couple of weeks or so. And I was very lucky because I got pulled in the first round of the visas for that year. That case is not normal. I have to definitely say this. Don't expect to apply into and get into the pool and then be pulled straight after, because that really isn't realistic. For me, as I say, I was very, very lucky, but also I was literally one of the first in line when the new visas were released. So that gave me the best chances of getting one. Another thing with the lottery system is that if you do hold dual citizenship, for example, if you have an Irish passport and a UK passport, make sure to look at the quotas for each country for that year, because they might be different. I know, for example, when I was applying, there was a larger quota for Ireland than there was for the UK, and therefore you have a bigger chance of applying on an Irish passport as you would do a British passport. So it's definitely something to check out if you do hold multiple passports. I know of some people that have applied to be in the pool and haven't been pulled for months and months and months. Sometimes it can take even years. So what I would say is don't base solid plans around getting this visa until you have been pulled, and really until you get it approved. Especially if you're, for example, going with your significant other, one person will likely be pulled before another, and it could be a significant amount of time before the other one gets pulled. And obviously all of these things have time limits. So for example, if you do get pulled, you have a certain amount of time to accept the invitation. They call it an invitation to apply for the actual working permit. And then you have a certain number of time to get all your documents in. I believe it was something like 10 days or 2 weeks to accept it, and then you had like 30 days to get all your documents in. So it was really important for me to make sure I had all my documentation ready, even though I didn't know when I was going to get pulled. That's the hardest part, I think, especially things like police checks and stuff. I would do your research so you know that you can get these documents as quickly as possible if and when you do get pulled. In the UK, I'm pretty sure that police certificates can be expedited, so you can get them quicker, but you have to pay more. But with police certificates, they are dated, and you do have to have got them within a certain period of time. So I think it had to be within the last 6 months or something like that. So definitely read all of the fine print. For other things, like filling out documentation and filling out the application forms, what I did is look through the documentation, see what was required and needed. So I knew that if and when I got pulled, I would know exactly what to do and I could apply as quickly as possible. Some of the cons that I found with this visa is that I couldn't extend it. I'm not sure if that's still the case now, but I think a lot of people get confused and think that they can extend this visa, and it was not possible for me. You can apply for new visas, but you can't go through the IEC program again. You get one time and one time only, similar to like Australia, where you get your working holiday visa and you can only apply for it once, I believe. Again, not an immigration lawyer, so don't take this as pure truth. Make sure to do your research. And as for professionals, I will continuously say that throughout this video. So for me, from applying to actually getting my visa, it was a very short period of time. I applied kind of early to mid-December, and I had my visa approved kind of early to mid-January. That was very, very quick. It was less than a month. And again, that is not typical for everybody. But as far as how easy it is to apply for, I think it's probably easier than some, but more difficult than others, especially with the lottery and the pool. I think that is the biggest roadblock to getting this visa. But if you do have the patience and the time to wait and just hold on until you get it, then it's definitely worth it in the end. So once I got my visa, how easy was it for me to actually physically move abroad? Now, as you will have known from my other videos, if you've watched them, moving abroad is not a piece of cake. It looks great, especially when you see all these videos romanticizing how amazing it's going to be. And it is. There is some amazing things about moving abroad, and obviously I have a whole channel about it, so I am a big advocate for living abroad. But is it easy? I wouldn't say so. I think it just requires a lot of planning and a lot of organization. So if you're willing to put in the time and the effort and the research into moving abroad, it's definitely going to make it a lot easier for you. Physically moving abroad, flights, for example, can be very expensive. Canada doesn't really have the same thing as the UK, where the UK has these like budget flights to Europe and things like that. Canada, that doesn't really exist. Flights are a lot more expensive over here, and that's definitely something to bear in mind if you're budgeting. Also, with Canada, there's not that many direct flights. If you're going, for example, from London to Toronto, yes, you'll probably find a direct flight. Even London to Vancouver. But for example, if you're gonna want to go to Calgary, or if you're flying from Manchester, or if you're living in a place like Victoria, like me, you're gonna have 1 or 2 layover flights, and for some people that might not be an issue. You might be really used to layovers, but for others that perhaps haven't traveled as much, that can be kind of daunting, especially when you're kind of moving your whole life abroad. So definitely planning when to come. I would always recommend coming to Canada in the summertime or the spring at least, because I think traveling in the winter would be a lot more difficult. Not just because it's a lot colder and the shock will be a lot more, especially if you're moving to places like Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Quebec. I mean, even Ontario. I have complained about the cold weather in Toronto many times. But more so for flight schedule. You're gonna have way more flights and way more options if you're flying in the peak seasons like summertime, but also they might be more expensive, so it might be worth traveling in the wintertime. It really depends on what you want to do, but those things are definitely worth bearing in mind. I, for example, traveled in August. I traveled right at the end of the school holidays, so I got some good deals on flights. So really with flights, especially not just moving abroad, but anywhere, it is really about timing and planning and making sure that you know when you're going, because if you're going to go peak season and you're traveling like 2 weeks later, you're going to be paying a lot more than if you were, for example, traveling off season and you'd planned it 10 months in advance. One of the biggest culture shocks that I had when I came here, especially with kind of lifestyle changes, was credit scores are a really big deal in Canada. Now, if you're familiar with credit scores, and if you already have one in the UK, for example, you will not carry your credit score from the UK to Canada. You have to start all over again. Now, for some people, that might be a really good thing. For others, like me, who worked really hard to have a really good credit score, that kind of sucked. And the way that you build your credit is different here in Canada than it is in the UK. Now, for me, that was a very scary prospect. I did not want a credit card. I'd never had a credit card in my life before I moved to Canada, and I always kind of saw credit cards as this really negative thing, but there's a lot of things that require credit cards to pay with in Canada. I've also found that credit cards seem to be a lot safer, and also with credit cards, you can also get a lot of benefits from them here. I'm not sure if the same thing applies to the UK. Again, I never had one in the UK, but in Canada, you can get things like travel insurance and rental car insurance, and you can build points towards travel and cashback points and things like that. Obviously, you want to be really strict with your credit card because you don't want to get into credit card debt, but I have found personally that that is the best way to build credit and also to get some really nice little benefits from it. So if and when you do move to Canada, I think when you apply for your Canadian bank, definitely look at the credit card and start building your credit score, because you're going to need it for things like renting a place and mortgages, and sometimes jobs will do credit card checks. So credit scores is a really big deal, and also having a credit card is really beneficial, especially if you're, for example, going to a hotel. You have to put a deposit down. Putting it down on your credit card I found is much easier than putting cold hard cash on, because that's, for me, way more scary. Again, I'm not a financial professional or advisor, so don't take this as advice. Again, this is just my own personal experience, but if I was going to say anything, I think having a credit card definitely helped me build up my credit score when I got here, especially because I started at 0, which was not very fun. Another thing on banks, which I found really crazy because this does not occur in the UK, is that for most accounts, you have to pay for them. There is a monthly fee for a bank account, which in my opinion is kind of crazy, but here we are. I think there are free accounts, but they limit you as to how many transactions that you can make every month. And for me, that was just not very helpful, but you can sometimes avoid these charges by having a certain amount of money in your bank account at a time. Also, if you are new to Canada, a lot of banks like CIBC and TD, for example, do new to Canada promotions where they will waive fees for a certain number of months or even a year, and they'll give you certain benefits. So that's definitely worth looking at. I feel like banking is so different here in comparison to the UK, and also people in banks here are so nice. It's very interesting. I never had like an enjoyable experience in the UK going to a bank, but I feel like in Canada, banks are so much nicer for whatever reason. I don't know why. So once you've moved over to Canada and you've got your bank and your phone and things like that, the next thing I think to look at is getting somewhere to live. Now, whether you're renting or buying, the market in Canada can be very very competitive, especially if you're living in a place like Toronto or Vancouver or Victoria. The rental market especially is incredibly competitive, and I have a couple of tips as to how to get the place that you want, but also it's just a kind of reminder as to say, if you want a specific place, kind of try not to put all your hopes onto one place, because it is very competitive and places go in like half a day. My biggest piece of advice for if you're looking for a place to rent is when you're going to view a place, bring everything that you need with you to apply for that place. So for example, bring your letter of employment, bring your credit check, even if it is a credit check from another country. For example, for me, I brought my British credit check. Not everywhere will accept that, obviously, but sometimes private landlords will. So it's definitely worth bringing it, even just to show that you are thinking about that. And also, I guess this is another thing with like weird things like needing a credit card, is that in Canada, checks are still used for things, especially things like rent. So for example, we needed to pay a deposit, and I think it was first month's rent or something, or first month's rent was a deposit. There are some rules around renting and like what you pay as a deposit, so definitely make sure to look at that and make sure to work with a professional and a registered realtor, for example. When we were looking at our places in Toronto, we brought everything with us. We had our credit checks, and we brought our checkbook too, to write a check for the deposit and everything like that. So if we looked at it and we knew that we wanted to apply for it, we could literally just hand everything to the realtor there and then, and we knew that we would be first in line. That really was the way that we got our place in Toronto. We were, again, I think it's a lot of luck, but if you are looking for a place, make sure that you don't kind of pin your hopes all in one place, because it is very competitive. Make sure that you keep your options open and remember how competitive places can be, because it can be a very frustrating experience. Sometimes you might have to go into a place that you don't like for a while, but you will eventually get somewhere that you like. But it is worth bearing in mind that places like Toronto and Vancouver and Victoria are very expensive. Definitely do your research and try not to be too shocked when you see those prices, because honestly I was, and yeah. Okay, I think I'm going to wrap that up for this part 1. I'm going to do a part 2, which is going to include things like getting a job, travel, housekeeping back home, and how I stayed for longer. So if you like this video, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. If you are interested in seeing part 2, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. I post videos every single week, so I will see you again very soon. Until my next one, I hope you have the most wonderful day, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye!